Good evening, y'all. Thank you for joining us for another episode of News for You. My name is Julian Baudouin. I am the Executive Director of the Hub South Dakota, and I am here again with Tanisa Islam, who is the Executive Director of South Dakota Voices for Peace, and we are both members of the South Dakota Dream Coalition. Today we have some really important information again to give to you about some immigration laws that and some immigration issues that have been happening across this nation and how it impacts South Dakota. This information will be broadcast separately in both English and also Spanish, so make sure you stay tuned for our Spanish broadcast to happen shortly after our English broadcast. We really do rely on you to share this information for us and on our behalf, so go in and follow News for You on Facebook as well as on Instagram. Also follow us on the South Dakota Dream Coalition, the Hub South Dakota, and the South Dakota Dream Coalition, as well as South Dakota Voices for Peace. We have reached our target goal of 100 likes at the News for You page. So we do also encourage you to go in, like, and share those pages on Instagram so that we can get as many followers as possible there. Our goal now is to make sure we increase the traffic on those pages so that we can share directly from the news source to make sure you're having accurate and timely information as quickly as possible. So with that said, I'm sorry, I forgot K Pasa Sioux Falls as well, who is really an intricate part of our coalition as well as our Spanish broadcast. So please forgive me for forgetting them. But with that said, we do have some issues that we want to talk about today. And we want to start off with some new policies that have come up and some concerns around those policies. Tanisa, what have you been hearing around some of those policies?
Yeah, thanks, Julian. Well, it's hard to believe that it's been a little over a month since we've seen the attacks against immigrant communities and deporting us by the Trump administration. And what we're learning right now is the administration really didn't have a plan, right? It's been really chaotic. There have been things that have been said they were going to do. There have been things that have been recalled from what they said they were going to do. And if you look at the deportation numbers in the last month as in compared to the last couple of months of the Biden administration, they're actually the same. It's just that the chaos and the fear has really increased. There were some concerning things that were in the headlines, again, over the last week that I just wanted to touch on. And of course, when we get more information, we will share it through the broadcast or Facebook Live if it's urgent. So please stay in tune with the Dream Coalition, the Hub, Voices for Peace, K Pasa, and all of the other Dream Coalition members. So one abrupt thing that happened last week was there was something called a federal stop work order. What that meant, it was given to the Acacia Center for Justice. And they have a network of over 100 legal service providers for unaccompanied minors. So those are minors who are coming to our southern border without their parents or guardians when they're traveling and come to the border. So we, South Dakota Voices for Peace, are the only organization in this state that does these legal services for unaccompanied minors. So we had to halt everything we were doing, but the community really rallied across the country about the immorality of really taking away legal services from some of the most vulnerable people in our community. And lots of calls were made to Congress, and luckily that stop work order was canceled in 4 days. But it's just another signal that funding to provide these critical services to the communities who are impacted right now is in great jeopardy too. One thing I wanted to clarify is that the funding for legal services for unaccompanied minors and other victims is actually in federal law. That's allocated by Congress. The law that we're talking about specifically is called the TVPRA. And for the last 20 years, Congress has been allocating funding to provide legal services to trafficking victims as well as unaccompanied minors. And if you think about it, unaccompanied minors, again, kids who are traveling by themselves to our southern border, are really the greatest at risk to be trafficked as well. So then we were very happy that the stop work order was rescinded. And then a couple days later, we saw in the headlines that ICE has a new target in terms of deportations, and that's now unaccompanied minors and their sponsors. This again, I can't, the only word that comes to mind is how grossly immoral it is to target children. Who have fled to seek safety, which is legal to do, to come to our border and ask for asylum. But we don't know how this is going to be implemented. We are part of a national network that is talking through and figuring out, what is the advice we can provide to our clients and community. So as soon as we have more information, we will absolutely give that out to the community here.
So just a quick question, maybe a follow-up question. You talked about the TFPRA and how that funding is allocated by Congress. Is there any type of way that Congress can reverse the allocation of that funding?
I mean, they can always decrease it, and I guess they could. I mean, what we're seeing right now is the administration can do whatever they want. The comfort I have is knowing that there's national organizations and lawyers who are now going to court to litigate what they believe the administration is doing wrong.
And from this administration particularly is the fact that they're using fear to accomplish a lot of their task. And so one of those things that we've seen is also an increase in calls where clients and community members have asked about sending their children to school because, again, there is a fear around some of the social media videos that have been sent out where ICE has been storming into certain buildings and taking children. And so we just want to talk a little bit about that and what you should know and how you should be prepared in case, if and when, I should say, something like that happens in our community. Children in school, it's really important to understand the policies and also the procedures of your school. In the Sioux Falls School District, the autonomy actually belongs to the principal. So we ask you to call directly to the school, talk to the principal, have a really deep understanding of the school's policies and the school's procedures. If you have children that might attend more than one school in the school district, contact each principal because each school may be different. So again, that's really, really important to understand the differences and the nuances there. In addition, we talked a little bit about the social media videos that we've been sending. I want to really reiterate, and I know we talked about this before, but those videos are very rare on occasion. And so we see them obviously because they go viral on social media. But we want you to know that not only is it rare, but law enforcement does have to follow constitutional or follow laws and the constitutional rights of people as well. We are all entitled to those constitutional rights, whether we are citizens or not. And so again, that's a reiteration of things that we've talked about in our previous episodes, but it's so vital. So again, it's critical that the staff in the schools and the school offices as well clearly know the school's procedures. So as you call your schools, talk directly to the principal, but also I would encourage you to engage with the staff as well to ensure that they know the procedures. We talked about the incident that happened at Washington High School, and it from what we hear, it was an incident of maybe just a misunderstanding of a policy that might have been on the books or on the records from one of the school administrators. So again, talk to all people involved, make sure that you are clear, make sure that the staff is clear, because ultimately our goal is to protect the children.
Yeah, and I mean the school districts have all come out and privately said, not publicly, keep our kids safe in schools, and that their job is not to enforce immigration law, which is comforting if you're hearing that one-on-one. And that's why we're encouraging everyone to reach out, because we have not had public statements made in our area. And really, so what are the ways that ICE can lawfully come into a school?
That's a really good question. So from the conversations that we've had, ICE can approach the school just almost similar to a workplace. They can approach the school, they can ask for a child to come up. However, what we don't have a clear understanding of is if they can do that without parental consent. And so that's something that we've been working to find out. I think we will continue to work to find that out. and we had a meeting with the school district. We really didn't get any clarification on that as well. However, that's why power of attorneys are so important as well, just to make sure that we have those things in place to protect the kids. So.
Yeah, I mean, and I think it really, for me, it comes down to, again, what we talked about in the first and second episode of knowing your rights, which doesn't seem like a lot, but it is everything right now, is that if you open the door and let ICE in, then it's kind of game over.
Yeah, absolutely.
In terms of what they can do. But if you keep the door closed and ask for a valid warrant before you let them in, that just assures that the rights of everyone inside is being followed. So again, really important for frontline staff to know what the procedures are, and that they should be asking for a valid warrant before letting anyone in.
And just a real quick add-on to that, while your children are in school, they are in custody of the administrators and the teachers at the school. So again, if we can't really stress anything enough, it's that we are here to protect the children, particularly in what we're talking about today, but also we want to make sure you understand that there are other individuals in place in different systems, such as the school district, that are also there, and their responsibility is also to protect those kids.
Mm-hmm. Well, just switching gears, there was one headline yesterday that popped up that I've gotten some questions about. The administration has announced that they're going to require all undocumented people to register with a government, or it will be a crime, which seems very counterintuitive. Why would you go and register with the government if you're undocumented? Again, we have zero details about how this is actually going to be implemented. So, as we're getting bombarded with these headlines, it's really important to remember, all this chaos is happening and mentally wearing us down, and what it really is going to take for us as a community to come together around these issues is just to wait and see what happens on the national, and then get the accurate information from sources like News for You, and be able to feel good about knowing that there's teams of people across the country that are working to protect all of our communities.
Right. And so for me, that also brings up one thing of importance, that if you are hearing this information, we want you to continue to reach out to us at Voices for Peace, at Cape Sioux Falls, the South Dakota Dream Coalition, because these are things that we want to not only be on the lookout for, but things that we need to research so that we can make sure we're bringing you accurate and timely information. All right, so last week we did a scenario, and we're going to talk through another scenario this week. There's still some questions that we have unanswered, so we're going to talk through this the best way we possibly can, but we thought it was really important to talk through a traffic stop. And what happens if you are contacted by ICE through traffic enforcement. Do know that those who can make traffic stops for sure are state troopers, are county deputies, are police officers. We are unsure if the jurisdiction falls under ICE and if they have the ability as federal ICE officers to make those traffic stops. Before we kind of get into this, I want to make sure that we're clear to say we are following up with, with the chief of police, the sheriff's office as well, to make sure that we have a full understanding of who they're working with, and also to make sure that there's no changes since we've had our previous conversations with them. So anything you want to add to that before we hop into it?
No, I mean, I think one difference is that, it's public information who is in county jails. So we've been checking the county jail inmate list frequently just to see if we can see any trends. And we are starting to see that people are being put into immigration detention or an ICE detainer if they have an illegal entry for the time. So that's a pattern that we're starting to see. So again, providing information to the community about that. It looks like it's not hinging on if you've violated a state law.
Okay.
If you have something on your record in terms of immigration removal orders, that might be something that's creeping up on us now.
Okay. So through this scenario, we really want to not only remind you of your rights, but we also want to talk about the things that you are required to do by law. And so according to South Dakota law, you are required to provide 3 things when you're pulled over in your vehicle. 1 would be your driver's license, 2 would be your vehicle registration, and 3 would be your proof of insurance. That's it. Those are the only 3 things by law that you are required to provide. When we talk about your driver's license, I want to stress that it's really important to provide an accurate driver's license. If you do have a driver's license,
Recommending right now, absolutely not to provide any false documentation because that is a federal crime. So you don't want to trigger that, and obviously we don't want to be providing false information to use any foreign documents of your status and be used against you. So we'll talk about some tips and tricks, but on that question specifically, make sure it is not false and make sure that it is based in the United States.
Perfect. And then secondarily, again, as I said, not only do we want to talk about the things you're required to do, but we want to give you what your rights are in this issue or in this particular situation. And so you do have the right to remain silent, and you can politely just answer by saying, I am using my right not to answer your questions. It's just as simple as that. And once you do that, if they continue on, then your next right is really, really important. You have the right to an attorney. And so if that right to remain silent is being forced and you feel uncomfortable, then make sure you enforce your next constitutional right, which is the right to an attorney. And again, you can just simply and politely say, I am using my right not to say anything anymore until I speak with an attorney. Remember, don't sign anything, especially if you do not understand what you're signing or what's in front of you 100%. Allow your attorney to go over those documents with you, allow your attorney to have those conversations with you, and then that way you'll feel more comfortable in that sense. If there's no warrant, make sure you're asking a really important question, am I free to leave? It's really, really vital. If there's no warrant and there's no reason to be held, that question will allow you to go freely. If the officer says yes, then slowly and calmly leave the scene. If the officer does not answer or says no, continue to remain silent and continue to ask for your attorney.
Yes. Those are really important.
Yes.
So just some quick reminders on tips. If you are not a U.S. citizen, but you have lawful status of ending asylum application or another application that's pending, if you have that, bring proof of that. Have a copy of your student visa in the car or the receipt notice for your pending application with you. You can take a picture of it and have it on your phone, which is easier for all of us to access. But if you're showing that to law enforcement, make sure you do not give your phone to law enforcement because now they'll have access to whatever might be in there. Just hold it up and let them see what they need to see. So there is no law that requires U.S. citizens to carry around a passport or a birth certificate, but we're getting more and more questions from communities of color of whether they should be. So what we're advising is if you feel safer having a copy of your passport or passport card, birth certificate in your car or on your phone, same thing. Don't ever hand your phone over to law enforcement or anyone else really, but just
or allow them to physically hold the phone. My suggestion to you would be to send them that file digitally. You can always email them that file, you can text them that file, but do not, again, I'll stress exactly what Tanisa said, do not.
Yeah, that's good to know. I didn't know that, so thanks for adding that, Julian. So at the end of the day, when we're thinking about traffic stops, we're really advising community to follow the law exactly. If the speed limit's 30, go 30. Do not go 31. Make sure your registration is up to date. Make sure your taillights are working. Do not give a reason for law enforcement to pull you over. Because once they pull you over, there's a lot of gray area that starts popping up. We get nervous. Maybe sometimes we slip in what we're saying, and then that can kind of have a domino effect on whether they'll be detaining you or not. And the last tip that we have is memorize a couple phone numbers. Most of us don't memorize phone numbers anymore. I don't even know my son's cell phone number. So memorize a couple of numbers because if you are detained, your cell phone will be taken away from you. We've been told it's good behavior. They might let you access your phone to call someone, but you will have an opportunity to call somebody. So if you have that memorized, it'll just be a quicker and easier process.
So last week, one of the things that we talked about quite a bit, actually, I think most of our episode was about this, was power of attorneys, and we alluded to that earlier in today's episode as well. But the power of attorneys that we've talked about have been for child care and also your financial assets. And so, number one, we encourage you, if you did not see the previous episode, please go back and watch that episode. But today we're going to give you just a little bit more info surrounding that, and so a couple of different places where you can get that, where you can go physically to get it, and also where you can find out some more information to sell your house on your behalf. Once you fill out those forms, to understand what a notary, to understand what a notary is, a notary in the United States is not a lawyer, it's not an attorney. It can be anyone with the official South Dakota stamp, right? And so we're working on opportunities for you to come get a power of attorney signed by members of the South Dakota Dream Coalition. And also, I think we're also working on maybe compiling a list of different allies in the community that would help with that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So right now, amongst our Dream Coalition, to access them and come and get power of attorneys, the first is coming on the Juntos. You can call them at 605-274-3735 and make an appointment. And they have Spanish speakers there as well as people who have that notary stamp. So you can get everything done in one appointment. And then every Monday, Spanish speakers and about needing to go to different places. So again, really want to emphasize, we're hearing that people in the community are saying that they will fill out a power of attorney for a fee. The video sites, you can print them off of our South Dakota Voices for Peace website, and as we start to organize more, we will obviously let you know. So please follow us on the Dream Coalition.
That's all the information we have for you this episode. We really appreciate you for tuning in, liking, sharing on all of the platforms. We have reached a lot of people over the past month or so as we've been doing this. Thousands and tens of thousands of people actually doing without your support. And so we ask that you continue to do that. We ask that you continue to support us, continue to spread the message. The way that we're doing that is by making sure that we're communicating proper information to people in a timely fashion. So go and like News for You on all the social platforms. Go and like the Hub South Dakota, South Dakota Voices for Peace, the South Dakota Dream Coalition, as well as Cape Pasa Sioux Falls. And remember, we do this every Thursday, so make sure you tune in every Thursday at 6, and then again at 6:30 for our Spanish broadcast.